Hey everybody, Coach Toolshed here, and today I'm going to be bringing you a video about Dead Cells, which you may or may not remember was the game that was at the center of the IGN plagiarism controversy. And we all know that after I talked about it a few weeks ago, the story got spiraled further and further out of control. Turns out that the guy who created the plagiarized review for Dead Cells, turns out he's plagiarized a lot of other stuff over the years. He has since been fired and all that, and I'm not going to really rehash all that now because I pretty much already covered it, said what I had to say, and I'm just going to move on. I want to talk about the game itself. And I told you a couple weeks ago I wanted to bring you a review, and I would love to bring you that review. The only problem is that as it stands right now, my skill level is not really high enough to beat the game. I'm just not quite good at it yet. This is the sort of game that if you are highly skilled, you could beat it in a lot less time than it's taken me to do it. But this is the sort of game that wants you to grind and sort of make your character better as you go, and that's really the hook of the game, and that's actually what I'm enjoying the most about it. But this is the sort of game where if you die once, you have to start the entire game over. So that's something you got to keep in mind, and so if you screw up even for a few seconds, bang, you're starting over right at the start. Now, before I get into the details of the game, really, I want to clear something up because I know a lot of people see this game, and if you've read reviews about this game or watched some YouTube videos and whatnot, what you've probably heard people describe this game as a Metroidvania. Now, let me put that notion out of your head. This game is not a Metroidvania game at all. People who call it that, I don't know what they're talking about. I think they're just using a really, really lazy way to try and describe this game. This game does not have the benchmark of what a Metroidvania is, which is that you unlock areas of the map as you go with new abilities and new skills, and you sort of work around a centralized area, and there'll be different paths, different doors that you'll need keys or new abilities to open up. That is what a Metroidvania game is. This game is not that at all. Once you are done with the level, you're done with the level. You're not going back. The door's locked behind you. You cannot go back once you're done the level. So in this way, this game is in no way a Metroidvania. Just because it's a 2D action side-scroller with some enemies that you kill, that's not what a Metroidvania is. So anyone saying that, I've seen veteran reporters describe it as a Metroidvania, and I don't know what they're talking about, and I don't think that they know what they're talking about if that's how they're describing this game. Get that out of your head right now. That's for starters. So, I already discussed how when you die, you start the entire game over. However, you don't have to start completely from scratch. What happens is, you end up collecting what is known as cells off of enemies that you kill throughout the level, and you can find them off harder enemies that are in it. They'll be called elite enemies, and you can find them and they'll drop you a bunch of cells if you kill them. You can find some chests with rewards. They give you different weapons that you can use, different abilities you can use. Sometimes there's vendors in the level that you can use to purchase upgrades, upgrade your weapons, all that stuff. And then at the end of every level, you'll have a chance to go to an NPC called the Collector. And the Collector will allow you to spend the cells that you've collected off enemies that you've killed to purchase upgrades for your character. So, like right now, my character has the ability to recharge his health 3 times throughout each level. And I'll have the ability at the end of each level to completely refill that health flask, and I'll be good to go for the next level with another 3 charges. Now, when you start the game, you don't have that ability. And you can quickly buy one upgrade, but the second one takes a while to get, and the third one takes even longer to get. But once you've purchased the upgrade, it's yours, it's there, and your character will be able to benefit that as you go forward through the game. So that's a nice way where, even though you're starting the game over, you're inherently, passively, a stronger character as you go through the game. Now, you can also use the cells to buy stuff like, say there's a particular bow or a bomb or a trap that you found a blueprint for in the level. Well, you can invest the cells to unlock that weapon, and that weapon or ability or bomb will be added into the pool of drops that you can get inside the levels. Because as you move your way through, like I said, you'll find treasure chests and vendors in the level, and they will sell or drop items based on what you've unlocked with the collector. So the more you unlock, the wider range of options you'll have as you go through the game to sort of customize your character, what you want to use on that playthrough. Now, sometimes you're not going to get the drops you want, and that is one of the weird things about the game. But what that does is it forces you to use different play styles. So even though there is sort of a repetitious problem where, okay, I've already been through this level, I've seen these enemies before, but based on the different drops you get, especially to start the game, and you haven't been able to customize anything yet, you haven't been able to find maybe the drops that you like to use in particular, well, that's going to force you to have different playstyles. And really, any weapons that you find, any drops that you find in the game can be usable if you use them in the way the game intended. They're all very useful. They're all pretty good. So it really depends on what you in particular like to use. Now, I like to drop a crossbow down on the floor and just take out enemies like that. Or I've unlocked something where it gets some burning saws that go on the ground, so you can just sort of lure enemies to you and then just jump to a higher level, and they'll just sit there and get chewed up by that. And that can really help you avoid damage, because avoiding damage is the key to surviving in this game, because you are so limited with the amount of health you have. And as you get deeper and deeper into the game, the levels become much longer. The first few levels you can get through really quickly, but the levels are going to start to be pretty big as you go through, more complex, the enemies are going to be more difficult, all that. So the biggest obstacle that you're going to run into in the game is usually not the enemies. It's going to be once you get to the point where you're getting to the bosses every time, which I'm pretty much at the point now where I'm at least going to hit the first boss on most of my runs. Sometimes I'll screw up and die early if I'm not paying attention, but generally I can at least get to the first boss, sometimes the second boss in a single run without dying, and I'm doing that most of the time. So the problem is I have not yet beat the second boss, and if they beat you, well, then you're starting over at level 1. And this is the issue that some people might run into, where they're like, oh, this seems super repetitious. And it can be, because you're going through the same basic levels again and again and again, but it is randomly generated. So just because the enemies and the setting are the same, the layout is going to change drastically. There's going to be different drops you can find, different spots where everything's located. You're not going to know what it looks like. So it does keep it a little bit fresh in that way. And the other way that it keeps it fresh is that you want to sort of go through and explore everything, because you want those level ups. You want to kill the enemies so that you can get their cells in order to further upgrade your character. So even if you're having a really bad run, which the last run that I just had myself was terrible. I was playing really poorly. I wasn't really paying attention too well, and I was barely making it through to the end of the levels. Even on the beginning levels, I really was playing poorly. But the thing was, I knew if I can just get to the collector, well, I've got 27, 30 cells I can use, and I can upgrade this. I can get that, so that way when I start my next game, I'll be a little bit better off. And that's sort of the hook that keeps me coming back, keeps me playing. And like I said, I would have loved to have beaten it, and unfortunately I haven't beaten it yet. But I have been having a lot of fun with the game. Like I said, I've played for probably a couple dozen hours by now, and it's the game where if you were personally much better at the game than me, you could beat the game in the weekend without much of an issue. For me, this is a game that I could beat over a period of time, because I'm going to grind up. I'm going to try to unlock those abilities. I'm actually having a lot of fun just being like, okay, what do I want to unlock next? That's the hook that's drawing me back in, because even when I'm having a terrible run, generally I can unlock at least one new thing so that I can bring that into my next playthrough, and that is what keeps me drawn into the game. And it's a really well-made game, I gotta say. Every once in a while, a frame will freeze and I'll have a little slowdown for a second, but it's not like the game is glitching out. It's just like a momentary, okay, it hasn't loaded the next panel yet, something like that. You know what I mean? But the music is good. It's not great, but it's good. The pixel art, as you can see, is pretty much as good as you're gonna get when it comes to pixel art. This is really good pixel art. The character moves very fluidly. It's not hard to pick up on the controls. You get used to it really easily. It's a game that I think if you picked it up this weekend, popped it in, you probably have a good time playing it. I would say that I'd have to recommend it, even though, like I said, this is not an official review and I have not beaten the game, so keep that in mind. But I'm enjoying playing it a lot, and I think it's well made. And as you know, I like to do every once in a while. I want to try to do maybe once a month, maybe once every other couple months. I want to do an indie spotlight game where I talk about some smaller games that I've played from an indie developer. This is from a studio called Motion Twin, and they published it, developed it, so something to think about. That's all I gotta say. I hope you guys have a good weekend. I'm Coach Toolshed, and as always, keep it turned to 11. I'll be back next week with my fall and spring 19 preview. Hope to see you there.